The Circinus Federation. The Circinus Federation is one of the most powerful of the periphery's so-called bandit kingdoms. This small realm is currently led by the dictator, H.R. Little Bob McIntyre, but factions in the Circinus military and dissenting farm unions have become increasingly critical of his rule in recent years. This domestic discord, along with a recurring internal rebellion on the planet Dursadat, continues to frustrate McIntyre's long-held plans to expand the territory and prestige of the Federation by invading and conquering the neighbouring Illyrian Palatinate. Origins in history. After being accused of contract violation against the Free Worlds League in 2770, the Black Warriors mercenary unit abandoned Marek's space, narrowly escaping capture by the Free Worlds Navy. Vowing eternal vengeance on House Marek for their outlaw status, the Black Warriors settled on the planet Circinus and joined the pirates already operating there. Under the leadership of Colonel Zachariah Syrian, the unit supported itself by conducting stealthy raids against outlying Marek agricultural worlds. With the Amaris civil wars still raging, House Marek proved unwilling to commit troops to clearing up what it considered at the time to be no more than a minor nuisance. The nascent Federation might have remained a simple pirate band if not for the 2785 arrival of a small convoy of Lyran settlers fleeing the destruction of the Civil War. The farmers joined with the mercenaries, providing the Federation with a legitimate means of supporting its population. The Lyran farmers apparently never looked too closely into the nature of their new allies, the pirates continuing to conduct what remained covert operations and the farmers asking no questions as long as their allies provided the tools and consumer goods they needed. In return, they gave the pirates the appearance of a respectable agrarian society for the neighbouring worlds who were their victims. Then, during a lull in the Second Succession War between 2839 and 2864, Marek troops invaded the world of Circinus. Lacking a defensive force, the population had no choice but to surrender. In subsequent decades, Marek leaders ruled with an iron hand, deepening the Circinian hatred of the League. Eventually, the continuing succession wars created a more pressing need for Marek forces elsewhere, and the Free Worlds League abandoned its garrisons. Within months, Circinian forces resumed raiding. The raiders concentrated their attacks against the border worlds of the Free Worlds League and the Lyran Commonwealth, which were too busy fighting the Third Succession War to allocate troops to defend against the Circinian attacks. During this period, the inhabitants of Circinus also began cautiously settling nearby systems, claiming 8 worlds between 2990 and 3020. From his new empire, President C.J. Bob McIntyre entered into a series of joint reconciliation talks with the Lyran government and the Free Worlds government. Through skillful diplomacy and the judicious return of prisoners, and without once admitting to any wrongdoing on the part of his people, McIntyre managed to avert a wholesale counterattack against his federation by playing off the mutual suspicions of his Marek and Steiner counterparts. During the Fourth Succession War, the Circinian raids grew increasingly profitable. At this time, Circinian raiders could strike their targets with virtual impunity, as Lyran forces fought off the Curitan offensives and Marek armies deteriorated. President McIntyre used much of the profits gained from these raids to increase the size of the Black Warriors, who remained the primary Circinian military force. McIntyre bolstered the warriors by supplying them with new battle mechs, personnel, training, and members of several mercenary units left penniless after the Fourth Succession War. By 3032, the Black Warriors had added 2 full regiments to its number, and the Circinus Federation stood poised to embark on a period of interstellar conquest. Rising Sun. President C.J. McIntyre's dream of a Circinian empire received an unforeseen setback when the president died of a heart attack in August of 3032. The president's son, H.R. Little Bob McIntyre, assumed the presidency immediately after his father's death and quickly consolidated power with the help of Adam Syrian, commander of the Black Warriors and director of covert operations, namely piracy. After securing his position, the new president announced that he would carry out his father's dream of making the Circinus Federation a true interstellar power. As a first step toward achieving this dream, he planned to conquer the mineral-rich worlds of the Illyrian Palatinate, and ordered Circinian military leaders to prepare an invasion plan. Within weeks, Circinian manufacturers were busy producing materiel for the invasion, and the Circinian military had completed a campaign strategy. In November 3032, only days before the invasion was scheduled to commence, a second tragedy again delayed the conquest of the Illyrian Palatinate. Black Warrior's commander Adam Syrian died as a result of injuries he suffered during a tavern brawl on Circinus. The Black Warriors, which served as the command staff and core of the Circinian forces, were thrown into disarray. Like the government of the Circinus Federation itself, the Black Warriors had no system to provide an accepted order of succession. Traditionally, the Black Warriors had been led by a member of the Syrian family, but many military leaders considered the late commander's only son, Michael Syrian, too young and inexperienced to lead the forces. Eager to avoid any infighting that might threaten morale and unit cohesion and weaken the military, McIntyre announced that he would assume command of the Black Warriors until Michael Syrian was able and old enough to lead. Many individuals in the Black Warriors questioned McIntyre's ability to command the military, as the president possessed only marginal skill as a mech warrior and virtually no battlefield experience. However, McIntyre preempted these concerns by announcing that the invasion would be postponed for a year while he trained with the Warriors to ensure a quick victory for the Federation. During the subsequent months, McIntyre attempted to consolidate his support within the Circinian military forces and eliminate any opposition. His efforts proved only partially successful. Even as the revised invasion date neared, many members of the Black Warriors continued to view McIntyre with suspicion and hostility for his violation of the traditional unspoken agreement between Circinian politicians and military leaders to refrain from visibly encroaching on one another's areas of influence. In addition, Little Bob soon proved himself incapable of continuing the political balancing act of hiding the true nature of the Black Warriors from the Circinian public. Though, over the years, most Circinians had become aware of the nature of their planet's income, they gladly turned a blind eye in favour of the Federation's continued prosperity. McIntyre's ineptitude stood to ruin decades of clever diplomacy in a matter of months. Michael Syrian emerged as an unofficial leader of this silent opposition, but the Syrian name continued to elicit respect and even reverence amongst the Black Warriors, and McIntyre could do little to counter the rising fortunes of the young mech warrior. Palatinate Invasion. In 3034, McIntyre announced to the Circinian people that their time had come. He vowed that by quickly conquering the Palatinate, the Circinus Federation would become a respected periphery power, immune from the Innisphere aggression forever. Shortly after that announcement, McIntyre ordered the invasion to begin. Unfortunately, McIntyre's prediction of a quick victory for the Federation proved wrong. Apparently, the Federation's ineffectual service failed to detect the military preparations taken by the Illyrians during the long delays that plagued the launch of the invasion, and it seems probable that McIntyre's desire for a quick victory caused him to discount any reports that did come through. As a result, the invading Circinian forces were completely surprised when they encountered seasoned mercenary troops defending the Palatinate worlds. As Circinian losses began to mount quickly, McIntyre ordered a full-scale retreat to preserve his forces. Fearful of the popular disdain the failed invasion might engender, as well as any advantages failure might provide his opponents in the military, McIntyre immediately ordered his loyal commanders to identify a suitable, vulnerable target for another invasion. Within days, those commanders had identified a target, the Lovian world of Dersidats. Once the site of a Federation colony, the small agricultural world had been a protectorate of the Lovian League since 3003. Dersidats' complete lack of strategic value and its scant resources had enabled the planet's population to live free of outside aggression during the intervening years, and it had virtually no defensive forces when Circinian troops landed. Within days, the Dersidatsans had surrendered to the Circinian invaders, who established several small garrisons and settlements on the world. Despite the quick victory, pockets of Dersidatsan resistance fighters remained on the world. But reports of these fighters were lost in the flood of news accounts of the Federation's victory and the government's proclamations of a dawning Circinian empire. Although Dersidats had no real strategic or economic value, and the victory was not a particularly impressive military feat, it did improve McIntyre's popularity and silence his opponents. On the defensive. In the years following the conquest of Dersidats, a number of events occurred that threatened McIntyre's rule, as well as the future of the Federation itself. First, an uprising on Dersidats in 3036 interrupted the President's plan to mount a second invasion of the Illyrian Palatinate. At the time of the uprising, the Circinian presence on the planet had been reduced to a single company, which was easily overwhelmed by a well-armed rebel strike force. The action enraged McIntyre, who ordered the rest of the Black Warriors to Dersidats to crush the rebellion. However, McIntyre quickly withdrew the order when he received reports of a massive Marakandavian troop movement near the Federation borders. Fearing a war that might spill over into the Federation, McIntyre ordered that all Circinian worlds along the border be garrisoned with troops to counter any incursion. At the same time, he ordered that Circinian military forces cease all raiding activities directed against Marek and Davian worlds and return to the realm. For several tense months, Circinian military leaders waited for the attacks they considered inevitable. When a year had passed without any foreign aggression, McIntyre cancelled the alert and, confident that the threat had passed, returned his attention to the rebellion on Dersadats. The Dersadats and rebels had spent the past months digging in and preparing sturdier defences. When Black Warriors returned to the world, they faced a better armed and better prepared opponent. The reconquest of the world quickly degenerated into a guerrilla war in which the Circinian forces were forced to track small bands of rebels through the planet's numerous mountain ranges. Inevitably, the campaign grew far more costly than the Circinian planners had anticipated, and though the protracted war provided further fuel to the simmering discontent within the military, McIntyre refused to abandon the world. By the end of 3040, the Circinians had subdued most of the rebels on Dersadat. Despite continued scattered guerrilla activity, McIntyre declared victory for the Federation and withdrew nearly all the Circinian forces from the planet. Then he began preparations for the delayed second invasion of the Illyrian Palatinate. Those plans were again interrupted in the opening days of 3041, when a group of Black Warriors, secretly backed by Michael Syrian, attempted to seize power in a coup d'etat. The president escaped the initial attack, and soon the rebels and troops loyal to McIntyre were embroiled in a fierce running battle that lasted a full year and spanned every Circinian world. Eventually, the loyalist forces prevailed, but more than two-thirds of the Circinian military were destroyed in the brutal civil conflict. McIntyre immediately instituted a brutal purge to eradicate any surviving opposition within his military. Michael Syrian was arrested, but later found innocent of the charges of treason. Apparently, Syrian had carefully avoided any discernible involvement in the rebellion. That fact, along with the prestige of his family and its influence in the Circinian judicial system, saved him from the executioner's chopping block. The battered and demoralised Federation received yet another blow in 3042 when a young Black Warriors company commander on a deep raiding mission into Lyran space allegedly discovered a Starleague cache on an uncharted periphery world. Rather than return with this find to the Federation, Captain Hopper Morrison and his unit deserted. The Federation made several failed attempts to hunt down the renegade unit. Despite all of these misfortunes, McIntyre managed to retain the presidency and hold the Circinus Federation together. Slowly, the realm began to rebuild, resorting to its traditional means of generating capital, raiding. The clan's invasion of the Innisphere in 3050 actually aided this rebuilding effort by drawing Innisphere attention away from the worlds along their border. Circinus Federation Military. The Black Warriors, plus several additional units, serve as the Circinian military. The current force consists of a battalion-sized core unit of Black Warriors, as well as several House McIntyre Lancers and mercenary companies. Never a truly unified force, the Black Warriors constantly test the loyalties of various factions within their ranks. The largest faction, led by Major Fritz Donner, consists of units loyal to President McIntyre. A faction of near equal strength, however, supports Company Commander Michael Syrian, heir to the Black Warriors military unit. Because of the fierce rivalry of these two factions, most of the mercenaries employed in the Circinian military studiously avoid taking sides. Circinian military leaders have never made any real effort to regulate or standardise their uniforms, and each Circinian military unit has its own uniform. This system was established when the Black Warriors began attracting other units to join them, under the belief that unique uniforms help each unit maintain a strong sense of individuality and morale. Detractors of the practice criticise it as yet another source of division between military units within the Federation. However, Circinian military leaders require that all unit uniforms include the emblem of the Federation, and that all military personnel wear the emblem somewhere above the waist. This stipulation was added after the fighting Shamrocks were spotted wearing large Federation emblems on their rear ends. Although all Federation units use the same progression of rank insignia, it varies widely amongst units.